pledging checklist.
Halen is on it.
Okay, I will be pushing to Facebook now.
Okay. So you let me know once it's there, and then I'll push it to. Got it? Okay. I don't see it yet.
Okay, it's live now.
Okay, I see it now. I will share to.
Shall we admit the waiting room?
Yep.
Okay.
Aloha, welcome everybody. We're just gonna give everybody a few minutes to log in and connect the audio and do all that good stuff. All right. Welcome, everybody. You are here for our latest episode of Forest Fridays. We're going to give maybe people another minute to log in, and then we'll get started. All right, welcome everybody. This is the new episode of Forest Fridays, a conversation about conservation in the forests of Kauai. This is brought to you by the Kauai Invasive Species Committee and the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. And we are very proud this time to be a part of Ohia Love Fest Week. And we'll talk about that a little more later. My name is Julia Diekmann, and I work with the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. We also have Halen Chock here and Kim Rogers from the Kauai Invasive Species Committee. Yes, they're waving, those two. And we also have Lisa Callie Crampton and Tyler Winter from the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. They are all here today to give you an update on what is happening and has happened in Kauai's forest this year. So our motto, our question for this episode is, what's the haps in the forest? And I hope I said that all right with my German accent in Pidgin. Let's just go over a few things before we get started. We are using a regular Zoom meeting for this event, so feel free to start your video if you feel comfortable. However, please stay muted so that we don't have any distracting noises in the background. If you would like to ask a question, you can use the chat function on Zoom. That's just a little box. If you scroll down on your screen and you hover over the bottom, then this little icons show up, and one says chat. So you click on that, and then the chat box will open. We are also pushing this live to Facebook on several pages. So if you're joining us on Facebook, you can drop questions there in the comments, and we will monitor the Facebook pages as well. So if you have questions there, you can just drop them in the comments. This session is going to be recorded so that you can share it with other people or go back and watch it again. Now let's just put that chat function to work. Please find that chat icon at the bottom of your screen and type where you are joining us from today. Oh, I see Anahola, Lawai, Kalaheo, Oahu, Kapahi, Niumalu, Morkalaheo, Eleele, Maui, California, Eleele, Ha'asam, Kekaha, wonderful. Welcome, welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. And with that, I would like to start our afternoon. And our first presenter is going to be Kim from the Kauai Invasive Species Committee. And maybe Helen can spotlight her so that everybody can see her with me. And I am going to share a short bio to introduce her. Since moving to Kauai in 1999, Kim Stoiderman-Rogers has worked as a freelance journalist and photographer covering conservation science efforts across the state. When rapid ohia death was first detected on Kauai in 2018, she stepped in to help Kauai Invasive Species Committee with outreach and education to help save Hawaii's most abundant native ohia trees from rapid ohia death. Earlier this year, with Kim's help, ohia was named the state endemic tree of Hawaii, and we are all so thankful for that. Kim, welcome. Thank you for being here, and we are looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Julia, and everybody else for joining us this Friday afternoon. This is our penultimate activity for Ohia Love Fest, which has started on Monday of this week, and we've had activities across the island planting ohia trees and their friends in forests and other locations. We've collected ohia seeds. I gave away some ohia keiki trees this morning at Tomba Surf in Kapa'a. And tomorrow we'll culminate our activities with a big ho'olalea at Limahuli Garden on the North Shore. And that goes from 10 to 4. It's going to be super exciting. I think I saw that we might have Jim Denny in the crowd, and I want to thank him for this photo behind me with this amazing EEV slurping on some nectar on a beautiful ohia lehua. So shout out to Jim Denny. There is a photo credit on that background, but I think it's covered up by my name, the Zoom name that they give me. So I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about ohia and give you some updates on what's happened this past year, and a little bit also on the latest on rapid ohia death. So let's go here, desktop. So many options Zoom gives us these days. Now let me put that on slideshow, right from start. Okay, does that look good for everybody? See, can I get a thumbs up? Yeah, thanks, Helen. All right, like I said, I'm Kim Rogers. I work for Kauai Invasive Species Committee. That's my email and phone number. If you need to get a hold of me at any point in time, I'm happy to talk about ohia and or rapid ohia death. So I am gonna quickly go over why ohia is important to us, especially in our everyday life. And I'm also going to talk about rapid ohia death and give you an update on the kind of detections that we've had here in 2022, as well as share some interesting science that's coming out of the project. So to get started, why is ohia important? And why are we having this big week-long event called Ohia Love Fest? There are 3 reasons I like to talk about ohia's importance to our everyday lives. The first and foremost is, you know, ohia is super important to our watershed. So when you think about Kokee, oftentimes when you're up in the forest, it's very misty and foggy and rainy. Ohia is built to collect moisture from the air and help refill our aquifers. So the water that we drink every day, the water that we use to garden, you know, the water we use for our gardens, the water we use, you know, every single day really is due to ohia in our forests. The second reason ohia is super important, I like to call it the tree of life, and that is because it is a home or a home to a whole lot of other flora and fauna, plants and animals across our island, including a whole lot of invertebrates that some people may not think about right off, including our rare land snails, kahuli, and of course, our treasured forest birds that we're going to hear more about today. So here's the thing. If ohia were to go away in our forest, ohia being our most abundant native tree in the forest, there's a chance we may lose a whole lot of other species in our forest too. So that is yet another reason why ohia is important to us. And third, I like to point out ohia's importance to our host culture. So ohia just permeates all parts of traditional and current Hawaiian culture. Ohia is celebrated in Olelo, in Oli, in Mele. We're very familiar with it in hula as well as lei making. But at one time, the wood was used in all kinds of building structures. It was used to make va'a, which are canoes. Its instruments were made to make kapa, the bark cloth. Ohia just permeated all parts of life in Hawaii, and has a really strong cultural connections to the Hawaiian culture. One of the words I've learned doing this project, in fact, you can see on my hat, is the word lehua, which is oftentimes referred to as the flower that we think of as either the red or the yellow or the orange blossom on the tree. Well, I've learned that that term was also one time used to refer to the first warriors in battle. And I like to think that's because ohia are super strong, as were these warriors, and they were also brave. And I think of ohia today in our forests, and when I think of where they're found, they're oftentimes on ridge lines. Like when you're just driving around the island and you look up at the mountains and you see these ridge lines and you can see silhouettes of trees, those are likely ohia. So they're like they're in the front end, right? They're like the hood ornament on a car. They're just right there, the nose of the into the wind. So that makes a whole lot of sense to me, thinking of, warriors in battle, the first warriors in battle, as being referred to as lehua. Okay. As Julia mentioned earlier this year, ohia was named our Hawaii state endemic tree. And this logo was developed based on some artwork that students across the state, that we had hundreds of students across the state who took this project on as a civics lesson for them in school. And, middle school, high school kids, even younger grade school kids were literally making art and writing letters and testifying to our Hawaii state legislature on why they felt ohia, lehua, should be named our Hawaii state endemic tree. And the legislators agreed, and this passed pretty darn easily. And as of July, ohia became Hawaii state endemic tree. Now, I like to point out the word endemic because endemic means found here and nowhere else in the world. And ohia is endemic to Hawaii. It is not found anywhere else in the world. Now, some of you might be thinking about, wow, isn't there also another state tree? And you're absolutely right if you happen to be thinking that. Kukui, long time ago, was named the Hawaii state tree. So ohia is named the Hawaii state endemic tree. And, I like to think that we can have more state trees because if you go into a forest, right, a healthy ohia forest exudes a whole lot of biodiversity. So I feel like, we can have a forest of state trees to go along with that. So now I want to give you a little bit of an update on rapid ohia death. This is a current map of the distribution of trees that have died on Kauai that we know of tested positive for one of the two fungal pathogens that lead to rapid ohia death. So as you can see, the distribution is pretty much across the island. The differences in the color, red is the Ceratocystis leuco-ohia, which is the super aggressive species that leads to rapid ohia death. And the orange, the yellowy orange color is Ceratocystis hulio-ohia. And I also want to point out that this is not a one-to-one. So there isn't, for every dot, it's not one tree. So each dot actually represents more than one tree. It's just to kind of give you an idea of the area. But speaking of numbers, we're right at 320 trees total since we first detected rot on Kauai in May of 2018. 320 trees that we know of that tested positive for one of the 2 fungal pathogens leading to rapid ohia death. Now, honestly, this year we have not had big increase in that number. Unlike on Big Island, I'd just like to make that comparison. We're still at a relatively low number. On Big Island, the estimate is that over 1 million trees have died due to one of the 2 fungal pathogens that lead to rapid ohia death. So we're still at a good place. It's not too concerning, but I feel like we have caught it early and we are doing some good things. I do want to point out one dot on here, which is concerning, and that is this red one here up in the Alakai. That was detected earlier this year. It was our first detection of either one of the 2 pathogens in the Alakai. And this one, unfortunately, was Ceratocystis leucoohea, the super aggressive pathogen. And next week, we have a helicopter crew. Our team is flying the island. They'll be looking, we do this twice a year where we fly the island and take visual check for any trees that look symptomatic. So I'm a little bit, I'm pleasantly cautious, I guess, optimistic. We've had a decent year, but we still have, a big survey to do that's coming up next week. So we'll know more in the next 2 weeks as to what, we'll have a better update, I guess, in the next 2 weeks. So I do want to share some science that's coming out of, most of it's coming out of Hilo, where most of the scientists are based who are studying this project. And there's some good news and there's some really great progress that's been made. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of, I think 3 or 4 things. And I'm happy to take questions later, but real quick, some of this you may have heard if you've been following me around. This is a map that shows inside that pink area, which happens to be a fenced area, and there are no feral ungulates or hoofed animals inside that fenced area. And you'll see that there are very few dots inside that fenced area. The dots represent ohia that have died of rapid ohia death. And the difference between the pink and the white just has to do with how recently they've died. But the point here is you can see outside that fenced area, there's a whole heck of a lot of dead ohia. And what we're finding is that hoofed animals like pigs and goats and maybe feral cattle, deer, these are the kind of animals that rub up against trees, or in the case of pigs, they're digging and burrowing in the ground and in roots. And all of that kind of behavior wounds ohia. And the only way a tree can get infected with this fungal pathogen is if it's wounded, meaning there's an abrasion or a cut in the bark that extends to just the hardwood that's just below the bark. That's what I mean by wounding. Say a branch breaks off, that's another kind of wound. So the science is really supporting where we have protected fenced areas that are ungulate free. We have a better chance of protecting ohia from rapid ohia death. Okay, so here's another bit of science that's currently underway, and we are actually participating this on Kauai. The whole idea is to, if a tree that has rapid ohia death dies in the forest, typically what happens, just like happens with any tree that dies in the forest, beetles do the work of beetles. They are decomposers in our forest. They actually use their sense of smell to scent a dead and dying tree. And when they smell that dead and dying tree, they swarm it and they start burrowing into the tree. And they happen to burrow into the tree where the fungus grows. And by doing that, they release that fungal pathogen into the environment. So the idea is, if we can prevent beetles from doing their thing and burrowing into a tree, we have the potential for slowing or, halting the spread of the fungus. So what this science is doing is you can see those blobs that are on the tree there. It's applying this kind of pheromone to the tree, so a pheromone, a smell, and the pheromone basically tells beetles, hey, our our tree is full up with other beetles, there's a no vacancy sign out, go find your own tree. So it's a nice beetle repellent to keep the beetles from burrowing into the tree and releasing the fungal pathogen. Okay, next, this is some more good news. This project has been going on for about 3 or 4 years now. It's the Ohia Disease Resistance Program. And what this means is there are scientists working in a lab, and as well, now they've started to look outside in more of a traditional wild forest setting. They're basically inoculating the different varieties and species of Ohia, because there's actually 5 different species and about 11 or 12 different varieties of Ohia. And they're inoculating many different kinds. And what they're finding is certain varieties die off very quickly, but there happen to be a couple that 2 and 3 years into this project are still alive. So that gives us hope that either A, there's natural resistance to this one of the, both of these fungi, or perhaps, we might see an increase in resistance, in those varieties and or perhaps others. So that's positive news as well. Lastly, I want to share something about two different studies that really kind of tackle resiliency in our forests. Apparently, almost 30 years ago, so in the 1980s, there was a forest on Hawaii Island in Puna that was harvested for biomass. This was just something they did back then. And interestingly enough, kind of all on its own, there happened to be no albizia or strawberry guava in the area. The Ohia forest has regenerated in that 29 years, looks like what you see in that photo on the left. Now, I'm told, unfortunately, that there has been an increase of albizia and strawberry guava in this area. So this would likely not happen again, but it does show that Ohia are very resilient. And a second study I want to point out, and I see my typo there, that should be young Ohia. This is another study that's actually currently ongoing. It's happening right now. And that is where some scientists have taken some young Ohia, small kind Ohia, maybe a foot or a foot and a half tall, and they've outplanted them in an Ohia or a rod infested forest. So where there's a whole lot of rod, a whole lot of dead Ohia trees. And what they're finding is, as long as the keiki, the young Ohia, are protected from feral ungulates and aggressive weeds, they will actually grow back in this rot-infested forest, and they're not taking up the fungal pathogen in their roots. So that's positive. They're only a year and now going into their second year of the study. So we'll see what will happen in the future, but at least the early results are really good. So that's a little bit about science. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody the 5 things, because I know everybody who's probably here today wants to know, what can we do to help save Ohia? And these are the same 5 things I've been talking about for 4 years now. One is avoid injuring or wounding Ohia. The other one is to clean your gear and tools, including shoes and even backpacks or hiking poles, anything that gets mud on them. Get the mud off as much as you can into the place before you leave it. And then the second step is to spray with isopropyl rubbing alcohol. And that isopropyl rubbing alcohol is actually the key ingredient that will kill any of those microscopic fungal spores that you may unknowingly be carrying out of the forest. And same with your vehicle or bicycle or motorcycle. Hose it down, get as much mud off as you can, especially before you take that vehicle into a new area. Number 4, do not move Ohia. The actual, believe it or not, dead Ohia can still carry live fungal pathogens that could infect other healthy Ohia. And lastly, keep your eyes open. If you see a tree that maybe you were nearby a month ago and all of a sudden, all of the leaves have suddenly turned a reddish brown, I want to know. So email and ideally send me the location. If you can get GPS coordinates, that's great. And also send me photos. And one last thing, if you would love to take the Ohia Pledge this week, we've started one. And that's available at bit.ly/ohia pledge. And I think somebody may be putting that in the chat. But I would love to see you take that pledge. That would be appreciative. And then tomorrow is the final day of Ohia Love Fest of 2022. And that will be at Limahuli Garden, where there will be, it's open to everybody. You do not need a reservation. You can tour the garden on your own. There's going to be educational booths there. There's going to be crafts and craft vendors. There's going to be talks every hour on the hour. It goes from 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. And I'd love to see as many of you out there who want to make the journey down to Limahuli. It's a very special place, as I'm sure you all know. And that's it. I will stop sharing and turn it back over to Julia.
Mahalo, Kim. That was super informative, and I loved all your graphics and slides. Look very nice. Thank you very much for this presentation and all the knowledge you shared with us. We do have a couple questions in the chat. So one was, what pheromone is in the beetle repellent?
Honestly, I don't know the exact pheromone. Yeah.
Is there somebody who we could contact, or who would know this?
I could reach out to the researcher, but yeah, I have no idea. So I won't get an answer tonight, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, Maui had run rod case. It was several years ago, actually, and it was Ceratocystis huliohia. And the tree was cut down and burned immediately, and they have not had any additional cases. Oahu has 8 to 10 trees, and all of those trees were the Ceratocystis huliohia, not that super aggressive Ceratocystis lucuohia. And yes, Jethro in Hana.
Yeah.
And I don't think I see any. Oh, Albizia. It's it is an invasive, highly invasive tree. You could call it a weed tree, and it takes over valleys and forests, makes them very like a monotypic, a single species forest or valley. And unfortunately, they're fast growing, which makes them a very weak tree as well. So in big winds or storms, they will fall over. That makes them a dangerous tree to humans as well as wildlife. And we saw on Hawaii Island, 6 or so years ago, a hurricane come through that took, some people were left without power and various utilities for, I want to say, up to a couple of weeks because of Albizia. So it is something that's highly invasive.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much, Kim. I think so. We went a little over on time, so I think I'm going to move on. It's fine. It's no worries. It's fine. I'm going to move on with Tyler. If there's any more questions for Kim, feel free to put them in the chat. Maybe we have some time at the end to cover them. But now let's move on to our next presenter, which is Tyler from the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. He's actually the crew leader there. And I also would like to introduce him with a short bio. Tyler Winter has worked for the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project since 2017. He is the field crew leader and helps oversee field work centered around the endangered passerine species of Kauai. When not observing endangered species, he manages and helps with the training of KFBRP's Kupu service members and volunteers. In addition to his direct work with the birds, he also provides office and field support for additional programs such as Birds Not Rats. Welcome, Tyler. Thank you very much. And you have the virtual floor. We can't hear you. I don't know if you're still muted.
Hey, testing. Can you hear me?
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Julia, for that. I will share my screen with the presentation here. Okay. So yeah, I am Tyler. I am the field crew leader for the Forest Bird Recovery Project, and this is just like a little slideshow with our project successes and stories from this 2022 field season. And I'll get right into it and go over some of our projects that we did this year. Okay, so we had several different project goals going into this year. One was Puaiohi monitoring. And banding. So we were looking at the effectiveness of our conservation effort in relation to rat traps. And then over on the right-hand side, the rodent control. We were doing continued rodent control in core bird habitat and also monitoring the effectiveness of our rodent traps. And then for other bird-related monitoring, we did lots of monitoring of AKK and monitoring of Akikiki, continued monitoring. So for the AKK, we're looking to understand better nesting behavior and interactions between AKK, as well as territory size. And Akikiki monitoring continued territory monitoring, as well as nest monitoring if found. And then our last and final big project for the year was the mosquito monitoring. So we did surveys for both larval and adult mosquitoes, capturing live adult mosquitoes and looking at numbers, trying to figure out the where and when for mosquito populations. So I'll pull up a slide here. So this is the Puaiohi. This year represented some great success in Puaiohi. We banded 105 individuals, which I believe is the most that the project has banded in a given season. Of those, you can see 21 were adult birds there on the right, and we banded 84 nestlings. And this photo over here on the left is an example of a Puaiohi nest wall. So the little red circle there encapsulates the area that we're looking for, the Puaiohi nest. So this banding was done in conjunction with our partners at Colorado State University and Auburn University, who have 2 grad students working in conjunction with our project, and they're hopeful to be publishing papers about Puaiohi success and interactions with our rat grid. So in addition to just the Puaiohi, we also banded 600 total birds for the year, and that represents the most birds ever caught by KFBRP in a year. This will be great, and having a large population of banded birds lets us look at the birds in the future, know different individuals, track territories, and is important to understanding, the health of our forests and how the birds are doing out there. Okay. So this slide, we've also done some nest monitoring this year. Specifically for Puaiohi was the focus, but we also did some nest monitoring for Akake and Akikiki. So we found 94 total nests for Puaiohi. This is a large number of nests for us. It represents a large number of the known Puaiohi population that we think is on the island. Continuing monitoring of these nests really helps us assess the effectiveness of the conservation efforts and the effectiveness of our rat trapping. So you can see there that we found 94 total nests. And then this little chart here represents the nests that were found on the areas where we're doing active rodent control and areas where we are not doing our active rodent control. So this year we found 32 nests in areas where we were doing rodent control, with 10 being very close, and then 52 off-grid. And we have the graduate students we are working with further looking into this data. Okay, so one thing we always do with our rodent control, in addition with removal of rats from the landscape through use of A24 traps, is also monitoring of rat populations in different areas. So for this graph, the most important part is the blue bar on the left-hand side of each column. So that represents positive instances of rats for our track plates. Over on the right is an example of a track plate with a whole bunch of rat tracks. We put out these plates, they have ink, a little bit of peanut butter, attracts the rats in, and then we're able to assess whether rats are present or mice are present. So one big takeaway this year from our most latest trip out rat trapping and tracking is that rat abundance continues to consistently be higher on our untrapped areas. So there seems to be correlation with areas where we're deploying traps and lower rat population numbers. It's probably a good thing for the birds. One of the other things that was maybe not the best thing for our rat numbers this year is that, especially at Halapakai there, the bar to the most left of the screen represents our highest elevation site. And we had the highest instance of rats on our trapping grid of any season that we've done this. And we've been tracking and deploying these ink plates and tunnels for the past 4 to 5 years. So, that definitely is a signal to us that further trapping and further management of the rats is definitely required to protect the birds. Okay. So for Our other endangered species monitoring, we had a whole grant and 2 whole people spending the whole season doing AKK natural history. Some of our great successes from this represent, we caught 3 adults. May not seem like a lot, but it's a ton of time investment in order to catch these species. They spend almost their entire time in the very tops of the ohia, crawling around, going for galls and foraging up there. So it's rare for them to come down below canopy where we're able to encounter them. So in addition with banding these individuals, we also had our first ever recaptures of AKK. So we were able to capture birds that we had put color bands on before, even one that we had done some transmitter work before, and able to get new blood samples, check on their bands, make sure everything was good, and take different morphological measurements. And we're still pending the results of those blood tests, but they give us all sorts of cool information from genetic information to malarial status. So super stoked that we're able to actually get our hands on recaptured AKK. On the nesting side, we've got 2 partially built. We found 4 nests in total. 2 actively made it all the way to finishing and fledged 3 young AKK. And then 2 ended in the partially building stage. That oftentimes we found AKK abandoned nests, and sometimes that's due to either predator pressure or territory pressure. But one of the things that we were really trying to understand and just get eyes on birds this year to observe. So, you know, it might not seem like a lot with 3 birds caught and 4 nests, but this represents hundreds of hours of tech work. And in addition to these nests and banding captures, we did lots of observations with camera, recording photos and videos of AKK, as is in the background of this slide, as well as deploying song recording equipment so that we can better understand AKK vocalizations. All this is super important to helping protect them in the future. And then our other endangered species, Akikiki natural history. So here are some Akikiki. This year we observed 40 individuals. Of those 40, we only had 14 that we could confirm to be breeding Akikiki. We had 3 individuals that seemed to be unpaired at one site, and then more pairs of breeding birds at our other 2 sites. One of the big things of notes for this season, for Akikiki and for all of our forest birds, is that it was a very early breeding season. We ended up with getting out into the field, and normally where we have a couple of weeks before birds are breeding, from the second we were in the field, there was active breeding behavior, birds building nests, and some of the earliest hatchier and brown fledgling apapane that we've ever seen in the field. And kind of to go hand in hand, we also observed the first successful triple brood of Akikiki. So 3 broods means that the birds were able to successfully build 3 different nests, because they tend not to reuse any nests, incubate the eggs, and fledge the young. So right as we were leaving the season for the field at the end of August, they were finishing up with that last nest. So that was really cool to see. We'll be back monitoring those birds hopefully next year. So our mosquito work, the mosquitoes, a disease vector for avian malaria, definite impacts on the birds. I have here a chart, and this chart represents our 2021 to January 2022 data. Our 2022 data isn't fully analyzed, but I thought this was representative of some of the same trends we were seeing this year. The gist of this is that, as you can see, the bars mean more live adult mosquitoes captured. We were catching mosquitoes at low numbers, but consistently throughout the year, even in our highest elevation sites that we consider the most protected, and we were hoping to be the least vulnerable to mosquitoes. And in 20.
Tyler, I can't hear you anymore. I don't know what happened.
You seem to have lost Tyler. His slides aren't advancing or anything. Let me reach out to him.
Okay. I don't think he can hear me either. Julia to Tyler. Tyler, can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I don't think he can. He's keeps going.
No. He's not muted. Yeah, I checked that. He's not muted. I can mute him and unmute and see what happens. Mute. We couldn't hear. Can you hear us now, Tyler? We couldn't hear you. We kind of lost you while talking. Can you hear us? Can you hear me now? Not sure if he can or not. I think he knows something is up at least.
He might have a wireless connection or a Bluetooth connection to his audio that died.
Uh-huh.
Are you back, Tyler?
Can you hear us? No, no, we can't hear you.
Testing, testing.
Yeah. Yay, you're back. Can you hear us?
I can hear you guys. Sorry.
Okay, okay.
Issues on my end. How much was I muted for, or how much was I missing?
You were muted for a good part, so maybe go back a slide.
Okay, sorry.
See?
We heard you say that the mosquitoes were consistent throughout the year.
Yes. So you were talking about this
highlight
slide, and
like-
then yes.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry about that.
No worries.
Anyway, mosquito trends throughout the year. Consistent at our upper sites, Halapakai, the upper elevation sites. And then in addition to that, we had 2 defined spikes and periods of mosquitoes throughout the year. You can see one in spring and one in the winter. So those represent times of years where we had higher numbers of adult mosquitoes captured. And then we continue to do larval surveying at all of our sites, looking for not only where adult mosquitoes are searching for blood meals, which would be when they would be biting and spreading diseases to the birds, but also searching for where larval mosquitoes are going to be, forming and hatching. They prefer stagnant areas of water. Okay. Okay, so summary. We're going to be doing continued research and resiting of Puaiohi in 2023. This is part of that combination work between Puaiohi and rodent control. The graduate students that we're working with are going to be a huge part of that. We're going to be looking at all those bands that we deployed on the landscape in 2022 and 2021, and hopefully getting a good idea of not only what birds are surviving year to year, but also where birds are spending their time, so their territories on the landscape. We have important AKK observations, such as our recaptures, and we'll be hopefully, collating a bunch of our observations, collating a bunch of our photos and videos to understand more about AKK and AKK territories. For our rodents, they still persist on the landscape. We're still seeing that in areas where we are actively trying to control them, we are reducing populations. So they're definitely going to require continued effort. And we're also going to be doing continued monitoring of both the killing of rodents through our trapping efforts and the monitoring of rodents through our tracking tunnels. Mosquitoes are definitely present in our bird habitat. And so further monitoring and research is being implemented in 2023. Callie's going to talk to you guys in a second about that. But right before that, I'm also mentioned that 2023 represents Kauai's year for the Hawaii Forest Bird Survey. And so that represents areas. We have long transects that cover a lot of the island, especially the upper Alakai Plateau and some of the areas going down into the Nepali coast. And we do point counts and assess what birds are in what areas. And so this is super important because it's going to be used for future population estimates and is going to help inform us how birds are doing here on Kauai. And with that, hopefully I'm not muted and I can hear things, and I will turn it over to Callie, who will hopefully have less audio issues.
Sounds good. Thank you, Tyler. I'm gonna spotlight Callie. Where did she go? Oh, there she is. Perfect.
Aloha,
All right.
everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Aloha, Julia. Yes, so Tyler, could you advance the slide for me, please? Thanks. So for you, those of you who do not know me, I'm the coordinator of the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. And these days I am spending the vast majority of my time not working on birds, but on mosquitoes and learning how we're going to stop mosquitoes from spreading deadly diseases to the birds. So a lot of you have heard me speak formerly about the Wolbachia IIT landscape level mosquito control project. So I thought I would just give you a quick update on where that's at. This is a mosquito birth control project. The plan is to release large numbers of males who are incompatible with our wild female mosquitoes, and they will usurp populations with the wild female mosquitoes. So you release more of these incompatible males than there are wild males in the landscape. So chances are the female will find an incompatible male, breed with him, and her eggs will not be viable. So there will be no next generation. This leads to mosquito population suppression. And it's been shown in the control or management of human diseases to very immediately have an impact on the human disease in question, such as dengue, for example. And so there are environmental assessments for this project ongoing on Kauai and Maui, with public meetings anticipated for early 2023 on this project on Kauai coming up. So please stay tuned for those public meetings and voice your opinion on this project. We were very fortunate at Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project to receive a large grant from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Act, that's what BIL stands for, to continue studies of mosquitoes that will inform this project and to allow us to start building capacity to eventually house all these mosquitoes that we are going to be receiving and releasing on the environment, these incompatible male mosquitoes. So in support of that, we will begin to receive test shipments of Culex mosquitoes in winter of 2023. These test shipments will just stay in a laboratory, and we will raise males in laboratories just to see how they fare when they are shipped from California. So these are Hawaii mosquitoes that have been bred in labs in California to be incompatible with our female mosquitoes because they have a different strain of Wolbachia, this bacteria that leads to the incompatibility. So males and females with the same strain of Wolbachia have babies. Males and females with different strains of the Wolbachia do not have babies. So they are just swapping out basically in labs in California, one strain of Wolbachia for another in Hawaii bred mosquitoes so that we can have this mosquito birth control. In aid of this project, we will then later on this in 2023 be doing trial releases of those incompatible male mosquitoes on a very, very small scale, just to see what their viability and dispersal is in the landscape. So that will be a test phase of this project. And then from there, we're looking forward to actual releases of large enough numbers of the incompatible males on the landscape to cause population suppression of mosquitoes in 2024 or 2025. So as you've heard from Tyler, some of our species are not particularly numerous. You know, he mentioned that we've caught 100 of the 500 puaiohi out there this year. We saw 14 or 16 of the 45 akikiki that remain on the landscape. We have no time to waste in saving these birds. So we're also looking to expand the use of a tool we're already employing on the landscape. And that tool is a bacteria that it doesn't cause incompatibility of males and females. It's a bacteria that specifically targets mosquito larvae and prevents them from developing. It kills mosquito larvae. It is very, very, very specific. It's to mosquito and midge larvae. It doesn't affect other insects. It doesn't affect fish or birds or mammals. It just affects mosquito larvae. And you can buy it in your hardware store, in your local Ace or Home Depot as dunk. So you probably know this product. It's widely used in all sorts of settings, including in organic agriculture. So it's exceedingly safe. And we've been using it already for the last several years to control mosquitoes across small areas in the Alakai. And now we're looking to expand its use to more areas to try to get some mosquito population suppression to save these birds. So please look for these projects going forward. And if you have any questions about those, I think that's pretty much wraps up our presentation. So we can, if there's time, we can take a couple of questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler and Kelly. Thank you very much. We are a little pressed on time. So maybe if there's one question that that we could answer, let's see what we have in the chat. I think there was one for Tyler over here. Do you know why the birds nested earlier this year? Not sure if Tyler can hear us though. Tyler, can you hear us?
Testing.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Okay.
Awesome.
So we can speculate as to why the birds nested earlier this year. We've definitely had birds nest in January in the past, but not to the volume. It could be drought related and or weather condition related. There have been some papers that suggest that not only the rainfall in the given year can affect times when birds are breeding, but also rainfall in previous years can affect when birds breed. So we don't have a very definitive answer other than it's definitely an observed behavior that we saw this year.
Okay, thank you. I think because we are so short on time now, I'm going to ask Kelly and Tyler to maybe answer the questions that are still in the chat. And if there's more questions for them, you can put them in the chat too. And maybe if you want to stay at the end and ask the question, you know, we can hang out a little bit longer. But I would like to move on and call up Helen. Let me spotlight her. Ooh, where'd you go? Oh, there she is. Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, everybody.
All right. So last but not least, we have Helen here. She is the outreach specialist at the Kauai Invasive Species Committee, and I also would like to introduce her with a short bio. Helen Chalk has recently been brought on as an outreach coordinator with the Kauai Invasive Species Ohana in December of 2020. She was born and raised on Kauai and graduated with her BAS focusing on sustainable community food systems from the University of Hawaii at West Oahu in 2018. After moving home in 2018, she has opportunities to work with various nonprofits on Kauai, such as Malama Kauai as the Mahi'ai program manager, the Mahuli Garden Preserve as horticulture technician, and Malama Hule'ia as team research specialist. My time spent with these organizations allowed me to rebuild Pilina with my Aina and community after being away from home. Now I hope to serve my community through conservation education here at KISC, says Helen Chalk, and I'm so happy that she's here and you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. I'll play that from the beginning. All right, looks good. Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you, Julia, for that lovely introduction that I wrote myself. My name is Helen Chalk. I'm the outreach specialist for Kauai Invasive Species Committee. And as we've heard throughout today's presentations, we've heard a lot about how invasive species like mosquitoes or invasive pathogens like rod can greatly affect our forests and our ecosystems. So I'm going to be giving a quick update on an invasive species that has made a big appearance here on Kauai that we thought we didn't have for a long time. So before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about what Kauai Invasive Species Committee is. I know we have some friends joining us from all the way from California, so you might not be familiar with us. So KISC is a nonprofit research project under University of Hawaii, and our mission is to prevent and control or eliminate incipient invasive species, and incipient meaning that they haven't become invasive yet. So we focus mostly on early detection surveying, rapid response to new plant and animal invasions, such as mongooses and little fire ant. And we also control a select target a select list of target species. So we do have a list of target species that we work on constantly here on Kauai. And if you want to learn more about that, you can check out our website, and that will be linked in the chat. And we also work on community awareness and partnerships because we are a nonprofit. We are really small. We focus on getting the word out to our community. And if it wasn't for the community of Kauai, we wouldn't have as many eyes and ears out in the forest and, you know, out in the wilds of Kauai that we wouldn't be able to find all these invasive species. So we focus, some of our target species are longthorn kiave, pictured here in the bottom left corner. So that is an invasive plant. We also focus on things like bingabing, which is another one. We have a picture here with our team member looking at rapid ohia death in Koke'e. We also do early detection surveys, so that's pictured in the upper right-hand corner. And also myconia, which is a big target for us in the lower right-hand corner. So I'm going to be talking about something called little fire ants. So little fire ants are found here on Kauai. Recently, we've had a lot more detections. And this is the map that we have right now, the current map of our survey points here on Kauai for little fire ants. We do have a larger map that we have all of our targets, but this is just our little fire ants. If you want to take a look here, so we do have some detections. The positive detections on this map, because we do have a recent one that just popped up, it's not on this map yet. So we have one here in Kalihiwai and another one in Kilauea and Moloa. So little fire ants, what are little fire ants? I'm sure everybody here in Kauai has experienced, you know, seeing little red ants. We just finished up with Stop the Ant Month, which is a statewide effort for all of the ISCs to focus on little fire ant awareness. So this is our time that we really go into schools, we go into the community, and we bring awareness to little fire ants and the threat that they have to our community. One thing that I learned in the first year since COVID of going into classrooms is that all of the kids say, I got bit by a little fire ant. I got bit by a little fire ant. But something that we like to let them know is that there's so many different ants here in Hawaii. And one of those is a tropical fire ant, not a little fire ant. So I'm just going to move this real quick so I can see. So the thing about little fire ants is that they're one of the 100 worst invasive species in the world. They're the most dangerous and threatening to the Pacific. They already are a huge problem on Hawaii Island, Maui, and Oahu, and other Pacific islands such as Tahiti, and now on Kauai. So if anybody has gone to Hawaii Island recently, I'm sure you are very familiar with the threat of little fire ants. Okay. So little fire ants, as I was saying, are not the same as tropical fire ants. So the difference here is the size. And I always tell the students that little fire ants are an ant smaller than an ant. And all of them are kind of thinking like, what do you mean? So a little fire ant is pictured here underneath the tropical fire ant, which is more common in beach parks and coastal areas of Kauai. Hawaii is one of the few places in the world that have no native ants. So a lot of times my students will ask me, well, what are the native ants? And my answer is always, we don't have any native ants. There are at least 54 introduced ant species. And if you're interested in learning about all those different species, you can go to the Hawaii Ant Lab website and they have all of those pictured and listed. So some common ants that get mistaken for little fire ants are pictured here. So we have the yellow crazy ant, the black crazy ant, which is identified by that yellow stripe there on the abdomen, the tropical fire ant, which is the most commonly mistaken one, and the little fire ant. So why are little fire ants such a threat to our community and our ecosystems? Not only do they leave a really itchy sting on us as humans, they can be really annoying, but the thing is they nest in trees. So a lot of times here in the bottom right photo, we have a big impact on agriculture and economy. So the thing is about these little fire ants, they are not unlike other ants where they usually burrow into the ground and then forage in trees. These guys like to nest in trees. So all it takes is one big wind gust and then it has like raining fire. And that's what a lot of my friends on Hawaii Island experience all the time. Another threat that they have is to our native species. So our seabirds that burrow into the ground, as well as our sea turtles. So if there are little fire ants near the area, then they can end up on the ground or, sting our native species. They're also a threat to our furry friends. So pictured in the bottom left corner is a household friendly furry friend. And the thing is that because they don't have, the ability to swat their eyes away, the ants that crawl into their eye, they can actually bite the soft tissue around the eye, and that can cause clouding in the cornea. So that is a big threat to not only our pets, but also livestock. And ranchers, it's a big threat to our ranchers as well if that becomes widespread. And they also are a threat to our plants. So either way we go, these little fire ants can have an impact on every aspect of life for us here in Hawaii. They're pictured here in the center photo that they actually farm other pests like mealybugs, and they actually bring those in. So they create an environment to affect our plants that we have in our yard as well. So when did little fire ants get here? They were first discovered on Hawaii Island in 1999, and they came in on palm trees from Florida. So since then, they've gone out to different places in Hawaii. Maui, they were found in 2009. The Oahu, they were first found in 2013. And Kauai, we actually had our first infestation in 1999 in Kalihiwai. Since then, up until about 2020, 2019, 2020, we actually didn't have any other detection. So for a long time, we thought that we had them controlled here in Kauai. So the thing about little fire ants, they are so tiny, they are 1/16 of an inch. And even the specimens that we have that I show people a lot at our booths is like really hard for them to see. Another thing is that they're more of a light red orange, and instead of like a dark red, like the tropical fire ant usually is identified by. And they also move very slowly. So that's one telltale sign, is if you think you might have them, these are some of the signs that you can help identify them with. So talking about little fire ant on Kauai, so 1999, they were first found in Kalihiwai. So we always monitor. So since 1999, KISC has been monitoring that site. It was about 11 acres big, and last detected was detected in 2019. Let's see, 2019, Kilauea was another site that we found. Let's see. So it's still in the treatment and monitoring phase, and that is about a 2.5 acre area, and that was last detected in 2020. And then 2020, we also found one in Molowa'a. So the phase that we're in is the initial 18-month treatment, which is the first and longest treatment. The first detection was in July 2021. And then the size was about 13 acres. So let's see, we're midway in the survey area. And then the latest one that we found that actually we had a big press release about was this year, 2022. It's estimated to be about 13 to 35 acre area in the Wailua State Park. And we're currently doing delimiting surveys, trying to see how far that infestation has gone. The challenge about the Wailua State Park area is that it's really difficult terrain. So there's cliffs, there's steep and areas that our team has to work through, as well as dense vegetation, as we all know if you've been to the Wailua area. It is really close to the river as well, so Wailua River, and the full size of this infestation is unknown right now, but we are working with state, county, and private landowners to try and get a hold on this and see how big this infestation is. So another challenge is limited resources and on-island capacity. And we also have, during Stop the Ant Month in October, we just discovered a new detection in Koloa, and we are still working on delimiting surveys for that as well. So what can we do for little fire ants? What can we do to stop them? Test, test, and test. So we recommend that everybody test your yard or test your property at least once a year. My yard is full of trees and hollow trees, and there's always people coming in and out. So I'm choosing to test quarterly, just because I do live with other people on the property. And how do you test? So you can always go to our website or the Stop the Ant website to get instructions or to request a kit, or you can even go to our public libraries, and we always have test kits there with instructions. But what you're going to do is you're going to get some chopsticks or sticks provided in the kit. You're going to dip that into peanut butter, and then you're going to place that in shady, moist areas near plants and especially near trees. So they like small, dark hiding places, but definitely around trees. And then the difference between how you're going to survey with peanut butter is you don't want a big glob. So I always tell the students, if you think it can be a snack for you, that you put too much peanut butter. So what you want to do is wipe off the excess and just put enough to get them to come to the stick. You're going to leave it out for about an hour, and then when you go back and collect them, you put them into a Ziploc bag. That's just right. And what you're going to do is put them into the freezer. So what that does is that kills them without smushing the specimens. So we're able to look at them under the microscope. And you're going to mail that or drop it off at our KISC site. So that is going to be up in Wailua Homesteads. That is 7370 Kuamo'o Road. And if you're familiar with Wailua Homesteads, you pretty much just go all the way up, and the very last building on the right, the CTAR station, we're in there. And then if you have any other questions, you can always email me at kisc@hawaii.edu. And if you have any inquiries about ants, then be sure to give us a call. And if it is little fire ant that we find on your property, we will treat it completely for free. And that is it for me, guys.
Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you for all this information and for pulling through despite being a little under the weather. Good job. I do have my little fire ant kit already, and I'm going to test my yard in Kalaheo and hope that I'm not finding them. So thank you very much. Let's see if we have some questions for Helen or for any of the other presenters. I have not seen anything on Facebook. Can we still do a fire ant test kit on other islands?
Yes, you definitely can. So if you go to stoptheant.org, you can actually request a kit, and they'll mail it to you to your respective island. But also you could totally do this with household items. So if you go to Stop the Ant website or Hawaii Ant Lab, there are tons of resources of how to survey, and then you can send that to your respective invasive species committee.
Great, thank you, thank you. I know we are over 5 o'clock already, but Kim told me to not worry about time, so I'm going to stop worrying about time. We do have a last question that like a round robin question that we wanted to ask everybody. So if you guys still have time and want to stick around and listen to the answer, that's great. And if you have to leave, then that's totally fine too. Our round robin question is going to be, what's your program's greatest success or concern of this year? And I think we can start maybe with Kim, like on the order of presenting, if that's okay with Kim.
Yeah, sure. I'll make it real quick. Our greatest concern, I would say, was the Ceratocystis leucoohea detection in the Alakai. Our greatest success, I would say, was getting hundreds of school kids from around the state to go through the entire legislative process again and again and again to have ohia named our state endemic tree.
That's definitely super awesome. Yeah. I love that that happened. Yeah. All right. Who wants to go next? What's your program's greatest success or concern of the year? Kelly or Tyler, or maybe both?
I'll go. So I think our greatest success of the year was we had a larger crew this year, lots of funding, and accomplished a lot of goals and did a lot of monitoring. In those slides, yeah, as Callie mentioned, 100 Puaohi represents a large portion of the population. So understanding how they're doing is excellent. But the continued concern continues to be the decline of our forest birds in the wild. It seems to not be stopping, and it is many different factors. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to add that there's a data point for mosquitoes that Tyler didn't have time to show. And for the first time, we've managed to do mosquito surveys out where those remaining akikiki are, and there are mosquitoes out there, and we did find larvae indicating the mosquitoes are breeding. So the advance of the mosquitoes across the plateau is inexorable until we have these tools to control them. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And then lastly, what about you, Helen?
All right. So as I just said, little fire ant is one of our biggest concerns here on Kauai, especially its potential to spread. Another fun fact I'd like to tell everybody is that they can have multiple queens in a super colony, which means that they can travel in the size of a macadamia nut. So it just takes the size of a macadamia nut for them to travel and start up a whole new colony. So I think that is one of our biggest concerns, as well as myconia. We did find some new mature myconias in Wailua, but luckily it's still in the Wailua area and it wasn't found anywhere else in the forest. And then Tiffany, I can hand it off to Tiffany if she's still here to chime in on what she thinks our greatest successes for our 20th year in operation.
All right, Tiffany, where's Tiffany? Are you still here, Tiffany?
If not, then I think one of our greatest successes is actually just going back out into the community, because this is our my first real year in outreach since COVID. So I would say that is a huge success for Kim and I to be out and in the community again, full swing.
Yes, isn't that so lovely to be able to talk to people again in person? Oh, Tiffany says her mic is not working. We have mic issues today.
And speaking of that, Helen, great segue into Ohia Love Fest tomorrow at Limahuli. So
Yes.
Lots of people there in person.
All right, so thank you everybody again. This concludes our Forest Friday for today. If you want to hang out and unmute and talk story for a little bit, we're gonna be staying on for a couple of minutes. And yeah, thank you everybody. Great presentations, lots of information, good job. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Ahui ho. Happy holidays. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye. See you, Jim. See you, Mia. I see you back there. I'll see you tomorrow, Mia.
And
See you
MP, yeah. MP2, that's MP. She's
That's
gonna
MP.
be-
Okay.
that's MP. She'll be there.
Jethro, nice akikiki photo.
Thank you.
Jethro has been messaging me about how to see the birds on Kauai. He's
Oh
an avid
yeah,
birder.
Yeah.
I love the birding on Maui, but it's only Hosmer Grove and there's like nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's not easy here either because they're all back where Tyler is sitting in the Alakai there.
Yeah, a lot is inaccessible, of course.
Well,
Right.
the accessibility issues are different. On Maui, the
Yeah.
accessibility issues are who owns the land. On Kauai,
Yeah.
they're really, really hard to get to. All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. I think
Happy holidays.
people left. Yeah. Thank you.
I hope you can save the Akikiki.
Thanks, Jethro.
We do too. Yeah, for sure. Thanks for being here.
Happy anniversary, KISC. Tiffany.
That's right.
Right, yeah.
Yes. Okay, it's just us.
It's us. Okay, you can't stop the recording.
Oh, yes.